Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Magdalena Pasternak, and today I would actually start by telling you about my recent phone conversation. A few weeks ago, my oops. Thank you. A few weeks ago, my phone rang, an unknown number. I almost let it go to the voicemail, but I decided to answer instead. Hi, I'm following up on your recent headset purchase. Do you have a moment? As I was rushing out the door, I said, I'm on my way to work, but I do have a minute. Without any hesitation, she replied, Don't worry about it. I will send you an email instead. Have a great day. And then that's when I paused. Something felt off. I had said I had time, yet she ignored it. How often do sales reps do that? And that's when it hit me. It wasn't a human. It was an artificial voice designed to sound real. And here I was, a deepfake researcher, getting fooled by a deepfake. And now what if it wasn't a harmless survey? We've seen deepfakes used to extort money, breach confidentiality, and spread misinformation. In 2024 New Hampshire Democratic primary, over 20,000 voters received a robocall impersonating President Joe Biden, urging them not to vote. Now, let's try to imagine detecting such a deepfake. For most of us, including me, it's difficult. But what about people with different auditory perception, like cochlear implant users? How would it affect their ability to detect deepfakes? Well, let's explore it together. Cochlear implants, or CIs, are medical devices that convert sound into electrical signals, directly stimulating auditory nerve. They process incoming sounds by dividing them into frequency bands, and those bands are then mapped onto their respective channels in cochlea. Unlike the thousands of hair cells we have in our ear that are able to process a broad frequency spectrum, cochlear implants use a limited amount of electrodes, and therefore they must prioritize speech-relevant frequencies. Therefore, this process simplifies and compresses sounds, with many users having difficulties perceiving pitch, tone, or timbre. And consequently, cochlear implant users might rely on different auditory features for deepfake detection, which brings us to our first question. How susceptible are cochlear implant users to audio deepfakes? What cues do they rely on for detection, and how would their detection differ from hearing persons? Well, currently proposed approach by Warren et al. To mitigate deepfake threats is to integrate automated deepfake detection models refined not to cause user fatigue due to the high false negative rate of automated models, and only flag human undetectable deepfakes. Well, this approach does not take into account people with different auditory perception, ignoring the key differences in auditory processing, particularly cochlear implant users. This brings us to our second research question. How effective are automated models on CA simulated audio? Well, if these models struggle with CA processed speech, such assistive tools may not be uniformly effective. But now, if these models trained on cochlear simulated audio perform similarly to cochlear implant users, well, we have a proxy. So, can these models be used as substitutes for cochlear implant users, and therefore limiting the need for large-scale studies? To answer these research questions, we designed a methodology that compares human detection and the machine detection. This is the first study ever examining cochlear implant users' perception of audio deepfakes. This is also one of the largest academic studies investigating auditory perception of cochlear implants. We recruited 87 hearing participants across US and UK. Studying cochlear implant users is both critical and challenging. Their unique auditory processing makes them a key population for understanding deepfake vulnerabilities. Yet, their smaller demographics makes large-scale research difficult. Well, we recognized this and collaborated with cochlear implant researcher who was able to guide us throughout this process. Given these challenges, a cochlear implant research often involves acoustic simulators, tools designed to approximate how cochlear implant users perceive sounds. Their speech researchers frequently use these simulators, which allows us to study their performance more broadly. So for our study, we applied 2 of these cochlear implant simulations to ASV spoof dataset, and then we evaluated them on 4 state-of-the-art deepfake detectors to evaluate their performance. The ASV spoof dataset is an automatic speaker verification system, automatic speaker verification spoofing detection, which allows us speaker verification and spoofing attack detection. It consists mainly of text-to-speech and voice conversion deepfakes, where text-to-speech is generated entirely from text, and voice conversion attacks are modifying an existing human audio sample to match the target voice, and therefore they're able to preserve many natural speech characteristics. We evaluated nearly 1 million audio samples across original and CA-simulated dataset, trained on, simulated by generic MATLAB Toolbox and MATLAB VLCoder. Our results showed that ASV spoof as fast audio detectors performed well on unmodified speech samples. However, their equal error rate rose significantly for CA-simulated data. To better understand it, we evaluated it based on the attack and system type. We compared them across original and CA-simulated data. When evaluating the text-to-speech, detection models maintain relatively strong performance. However, for voice conversion models, that was not the case. However, for voice conversion deepfakes, that was not the case anymore, where CA-simulated audio performed much worse. One exception to this rule, or to this finding, was the breathing talking speech encoder, which leveraged natural human sounds for detection. It maintained more consistent performance across the text-to-speech and voice conversion attacks. Well, these models provide us valuable insights into how cochlear implant users might perceive audio. It is ultimately the human judgment that decides whether the deepfake attack has been successful. So, we conducted a user study asking participants to listen to the audio sample, decide whether it's fake or real, tell us how confident they were, and as well provide us any cues they relied on for detection. We found that hearing persons were 78% accurate in their detection, whereas cochlear implant users' accuracy was at 67%, showing this statistical significance difference. This difference was mainly due to increased false negative rates, where cochlear implant users more often classified fake audio as real. However, this was not uniform across all attack types. As seen here, CI users performed relatively well on text-to-speech audio. However, they performed below random guessing on voice conversion attacks, meaning they more often, for voice conversion deepfakes, classified them as real than fake. This significant difference in performance shows that they're not uniformly susceptible to all deepfake threats. As previously mentioned, we asked participants, why did you decide this audio was fake or real? We performed thematic analysis, and following key themes emerged. CI users primarily relied on these more coarse auditory features, like fake sound, or accent, or metallic sounds, whereas hearing participants focused on these more subtle auditory cues, including pitch variations, tone inconsistencies, timbre, and furthermore, we also found that cochlear implant users were 3 times more likely to assign human-like features to voice conversion attacks. After analyzing the human detection, performance, and the cues they rely on, we went back to the models and assessed whether they would be reliable proxies. So the saliency maps reveal interesting insights. So these are average male spectrograms on deepfake samples from text-to-speech and voice conversion deepfakes, showing the top 30% most relevant cues, with and without simulation. So both CI users and automated detection rely heavily on these higher frequency artifacts when detecting text-to-speech deepfakes. However, it is not the case anymore for the voice conversion attacks. While the models still relied on these higher frequency bands for voice conversion deepfakes, these cues became less relevant after CA simulation. And similarly, cochlear implant users struggled to identify voice conversion deepfakes once these key auditory details such as tone and subtle tone variations were altered or lost. So, to conclude, our study highlights that cochlear implant users are disproportionately vulnerable to voice conversion deepfakes. We also show that current detection models fail to fully capture all auditory-specific challenges faced by cochlear implant users. Therefore, improving proxy models would allow us to perform large-scale evaluation on the whole group. Also, while conducting the experiment, we found that users have many misconceptions about what constitutes as a deepfake, like accent. Many people still underestimate just how sophisticated they are. Therefore, we believe that awareness and educational programs could play a role in protecting users. However, they would not be alone enough. This is when the technological solutions might come effective. Our findings highlight the need for effective real-time assistive deepfake detection tools. And these tools must ensure that all users, especially with those with cochlear implants, who are more vulnerable, have the necessary defenses against evolving threats. Thank you for your attention. I'm happy to answer the questions.
Thank you. Great research and a great presentation. Questions?
Hi, this is really cool. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed it. Two questions. Cochlear implants are, of course, computerized now. I mean, once upon a time, they were pretty much electromechanical, but now there's a lot of technology in them. Could the software in the cochlear implants be modified in such a way to help with this, as opposed to just observing the differences? Could we change that software? And then, well, I'll let you answer that one, and then I'll ask you another one.
Sorry. So cochlear implants, they have something called spectral smearing. So we're not able to directly put it on the electrode we need to push, right? If that makes sense. So it's like exact key cannot be pressed. And then there is pitch shift, because cochlear implants do not reach inside the whole cochlea. Therefore, they might need to move these like lower frequency zones from inside the cochlea, and then sorry, I'm just gonna try to get back to that. So that makes more sense. Lots of slides. Okay, cool. So they actually do not reach all the way here. So this higher, that's lower frequency bands, or the lower frequencies, have to be translated into the higher frequencies. So yes, there's already works on the adjusting cochlear implants and playing like which three keys on the keyboard I'm gonna press to make the same sound. But it's still a work in progress.
Okay. So the other somewhat related question is like many people my age, I wear hearing aids, and a modern hearing aid is amazingly computerized. There's more power in my hearing aids than there was in the mainframe that ran my university when I was an undergraduate. Are there parallels there for people like me who wear hearing aids who might be better or worse at detecting deep fakes? And could the software in my high-powered hearing aids help me do a better job, or am I screwed when it comes to deepfake detection?
Well, I'm sorry, but
it's
actually,
part of getting old.
we actually didn't examine the DHH group or like the deaf group due to the fact that there is such a differences in how severe the deafness is and the moderation. From my understanding, I know some companies like Apple, please hire me, they work on assistive hearing devices through headphones, AirPods, to mitigate the stigma of hearing aid. Because it's just an AirPod that helps me hear. And then with that detection, like if you cannot detect the lower frequencies, right, or the higher frequencies like bird chips, yes, it would affect your ability to detect deepfakes. And therefore, we need those tools, so please design them.
Okay. Hearing aids have changed a lot in the past few years because they're now available over the counter, and the price is about 1/10 what it once was. And so it might be an interesting additional area to look at, just because it used to be you had to have really severe hearing loss to justify the cost of hearing aids, but now you can get them over the counter for $500, and anyone who has even very moderate hearing loss can afford to do it.
Yes.
So it might affect some of what we're seeing with deepfake detection.
Yeah, like 3 pairs of AirPods can last you all day,
Right.
and they're cheaper than $5,000 audiologist visit.
Right.
Thank you for the question, Jeremy. And any other questions? We have time. Nope. Okay, I have a question. Did you pay your participants?
Yes, of course.
Okay, great. So we know the data is trustable. And secondly is that did you do any control, right, the baseline to compare with people who are healthy?
Yes, we
Okay.
compared all of the detection across the Cochlear Implant users and the hearing participants.
Okay, awesome. And also, when you talk about the pitch accent, those are you did the experiments to change the variables to make the result, get the result. Okay, not from the survey. From the survey or
Sorry, one more time.
yeah, the question is you ask the patients to tell you which are the indicators to, most important thing, or you go through your experiment, you evaluate and analyze the result. Like you said that pitch, accent.
Tone, pitch, accent can
Yeah,
influence.
yeah.
I was saying that there's often misconceptions about the perception of how deepfake should sound. So like I have an accent, and like a lot of people would put like extra efforts to understand what I'm even saying.
Okay.
And therefore, where does deepfake detection come after that? Like, why would a deepfake have an accent? Like, that's weird.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for your great presentation.
Thank you.
Yeah.